Welcome back. This is Critical Reading 2. We're reading the Asami et al. Paper, looking specifically at the experimental design and the methodology. Methodology is a good place to start when you're reading critically because you want to see if the methods are likely to produce the results, or at least allow the hypothesis to be tested that the authors have stated. So let's take a look at what they did here. Okay, so we know from the reading of the papers that the idea was to look at different crops, the three different crops, marionberry, strawberry, and corn, grown three different ways, and to see if the different ways of growing would result in different levels of phenolics and antioxidants. Okay, and so the idea being that organic has more, it's more healthy for you, sort of thing. So we want to see how they're grown. Right away we notice that there are no organic strawberries. It's kind of interesting in a paper about organics that there aren't any organic strawberries. They're sustainable, but no organic. Soil type. We don't have any information on the marionberry. There's a gaffe. We do have the same soil type in strawberry, so it can't be a confounding factor there. But in corn, we have different soil types. So soil type, and therefore water holding capacity, nutrient retention, all of that could be confounding the results that we're seeing in this study. Crop age could be confounding the results. Again, we have older plants in the conventional treatment that might be suffering more from the effects of long-term buildup of diseases and insects and other issues out there in the field. The younger plants might have an advantage. Clearly, strawberries tend to yield higher and have larger fruit size in the first year than the second. We can see that the conventional are 2 years old, the sustainable are 1. Previous crop could be a confounding factor. Green beans fix nitrogen, and we may well expect that in an organic field, but it may also create imbalances in the amount of nitrogen that's available. And that's really not what we're trying to test, is how much nitrogen is available. It's how are they grown. And if we look down to the fertilizer usage records here, we don't even have records on the conventional. It doesn't even have it. Now, corn would be fertilized heavily, usually with an inorganic source of nitrogen, but again, no records even there. Again, some discrepancies in irrigation over here, but the most important thing I want you to see in this is the chemical application. Remember the premise of the paper. If I'm spraying insecticides on plants, then they're not making their own defensive compounds to kind of ward off the insects. Okay, that's what was in both the introduction and then also in the popular article. So let's take a look at the chemicals, and what we'll notice is that there's either none or herbicides only. Okay, there are no fungicides, there are no insecticides applied to any of these plants in any case, and therefore why would we expect there to be a differential insect pressure in fields that none of which have been treated with an insecticide? So the basic premise kind of goes out the window on this one, unfortunately. And then look here, in the strawberries that are grown conventionally, we have glyphosate or Roundup, which is drifting in from a neighboring field, and it's hitting the plants. I mean, the last thing you want on strawberries is herbicide, especially Roundup. That will injure them. And so we already are suspect then that the conventional plants might have been injured by herbicide. And then we have some different herbicides being used here in corn. So again, look down through the fertilizer usage records, running up against my time limit on this, but you can read some of this for yourself. You can see the differences in the types of fertilizers and even the rates of their application over here on the right. The timing, there's so many confounding factors in this. It's really hard to keep up with it all. And so what we have is not an experiment at all. It's really just an observational study. They simply collected fruit from these different plots, and then they brought them to the lab to see if they had different levels of phenolics and vitamin C in them. And that should be a red flag right there, that it wasn't a very well designed experiment.